How the New Yorker is raising the question today, noting how for 18 days, Trump has refused to let go of his grief, alternating between anger and denial at the loss of his favorite target. Clearly freaked out by Harris's rise in the polls, Trump all but demanded Biden return to the race. Now look, these are not the headlines that Trump's campaign team wants. They do not make Trump look strong. They do not offer voters anything. These aren't headlines about your life or the choice in November or policies, obviously. And these headlines don't even address Trump's current opponent. And, of course, in a campaign, you have to deal with the current opponent, not the one you wish you still had. This is Trump's opponent. Now, Trump lost his presidency to Biden, the defining rejection of his single term in political life. And he thought he could beat Biden this time. And he was not alone. Many Democrats saw the same prospect. And now Trump has lost in a different way. He's lost his rematch. He's lost his chance at political revenge. And if he does lose to Harris, he has lost the opponent he might have beaten. Trump is fixated on Biden for all those reasons. He seems upset, undisciplined, and unable to move on. He is hung up on this figure from the past. Trump verging on his own Costanza moment from Seinfeld, living in the past.
Forget me? You should forget it. You're living in the past, man. You're hung up on some clown from the 60s, man.
It's hard to live in the past. Most campaigns are about the future. Harris and Walz are making the case against going back. You've probably heard that mantra. Today they're campaigning in the battleground of Arizona, and we can see already, as we've been monitoring it, this is one of those time lapses of the very, very long lines of people waiting to see this new ticket. We should note it's over 100 degrees there, and people are queued up and waiting and waiting and waiting to get in to see it. Arizona is one of the places Trump lost to Biden. When Fox News called the state for Biden, all heck broke loose at Trump's campaign. Harris has also released a new ad linking her middle-class story to Americans' priorities in the future of housing, prices, and health care.
She grew up in a middle-class home. She was the daughter of a working mom, and she worked at McDonald's while she got her degree. Kamala Harris knows what it's like to be middle-class. It's why she's determined to lower healthcare costs and make housing more affordable. Donald Trump has no plan.
Those are the Harris campaign's priorities, talking to voters about policies in their own future. Where's Donald Trump tonight? Montana. Kind of a curious call. It's another day where Donald Trump is not in a battleground state, as he also holds fewer rallies, as I showed you. Trump's there to link up with a Republican Senate candidate. So this is the contrast. Some of it is kind of permanent or unshakable. There are things people already know about Donald Trump and his policies and his style, and there are things that the Democrats, first under Biden and now under Harris, are offering. There is a policy consistency. But the new contrast from Harris to Trump is clearly so different and so much scarier for Trump that he hasn't really fully absorbed it yet, and he's living in the past, exactly as that clown told George Costanza not to do. Now, the Democrats' recent past involves Kamala Harris evolving into the role she is holding today, where people feel that as vice president, she's got some real governing experience. And as a candidate, she is more experienced and polished than the last time that she's run for national office. So you think about the DNC, here was Harris at the last convention when she was the VP nominee.
My mother taught me that service to others gives life purpose and meaning. And oh, how I wish she were here tonight, but I know she's looking down on me from above. She probably could have never imagined that I would be standing before you now and speaking these words. I accept your nomination for Vice President of the United States of America.
We will hear something similar at the next convention, but maybe with more applause if it's not a COVID festivity. We're joined, as you see, by Juanita Tolliver, MSNBC analyst, author of the forthcoming book, A More Perfect Party, The Night Shirley Chisholm and Diana Carroll Reshaped Politics. You can actually get that on pre-order now, and why not? Eleanor Clift, writer with the Daily Beast, her latest, Tim Walz versus J.D. Vance, The Battle of the Veeps and Vibes, is on. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Ari.
Eleanor, the past is something to know and learn from, but not always to live in.
Right.
What do you think of this contrast in the way that Donald Trump, he lies a lot, we've covered that, we fact-checked that, but he also sometimes emotionally blurts what he's feeling, and he seems to feel that he doesn't want to deal with running against what may be a harder opponent.
He feels aggrieved, cheated. He was supposed to run against Biden. Now he's going to run against somebody else. He hardly knows her, but she's, of course, incompetent. And he is suggesting that there was some constitutional funny business, that really she has no right to be occupying this position. So he's always sort of, you know, it sounds kind of unhinged, but he's always salting the water for arguments that he's going to make later on. And he does not know how to run in any other way than he being aggrieved. You know, first the courts were getting him. You know, now the country has confused him because he has a different opponent. He has to start all over. The thing is that after a while, people want to hear what this election means for them. They're tired of hearing about him. And you're right about the rallies. People are leaving early. He keeps them waiting for an hour and a half in 90-degree heat. And then he goes on for an hour and a half and says some of the most absurd things. In his press conference yesterday, he's talking about taking on Martin Luther King Jr., saying that Trump's rallies actually have gotten more people than King did. King got 250,000 people in a country that was a whole lot smaller than it is today.
Yeah, per capita.
So I'm waiting to see what the Republicans have. I think the rap on Walz that he got out of the reserves because he didn't want to go to Iraq. He's fought that back before. I mean, and I don't think people are in a mood for this. Just because these attacks worked in the past doesn't mean they're going to work this time. And the liberal agenda that he's supposedly so radical, you go one by one, it's most things that poll very popularly and that most people would like child care, lunches that don't discriminate against poor kids who have to identify themselves as poor. So, I mean, everything is so good right now, I almost don't want to jinx it. So I'm going to go with the joy, but like Reagan once said, trust but verify, and there's a lot of hard work ahead.
Right, and the fact that there's more enthusiasm than there was is an emotion, and it's a start. Campaigns have to end, and there's a lot of voter turnout, in some cases registration and other work to be done, and that's true no matter what happens. Juanita, we see the warning signals, though, are also coming from the right. The Wall Street Journal is part of Rupert Murdoch's media empire, shared with Fox. They have this piece saying Trump might blow another election, saying in public what privates have been, what I should say, Republicans have been lamenting in private. They say Trump's lost a step, basically. The long speeches Eleanor just mentioned that become a, quote, bundle of personal grievances and impulsive floundering. He lacks any consistent message. And they say it's not only that he could blow the election, it could also hurt other Republican candidates.
Honestly, I'm saying welcome to reality, because this has been the case for years. Donald Trump is doing this. And when you were doing your intro about Trump being upset about Kamala Harris as his opponent, I was thinking of Lil Wayne, show me my opponent. And Harris and Walz are saying, hi, we're here, and we are ready to dominate this race. And we're seeing that by the line you showed in Arizona in 105-degree heat, people lined up, but also the people who are ready to do the work for the campaign. I'm talking about the donations, which have been historic, and 2/3 from first-time donors. I'm talking about 200,000 new volunteers have signed up for this campaign. They are ready to knock on the doors. They are ready to make the phone calls. They are ready to contact the voters, all based on their motivation or hope, as I think you're alluding to, that is presented with this new ticket, and the way that Harris and Walz campaigned together in a joyous way, in direct contrast to the ramblings that make you question what is actually happening in Donald Trump's mind. Or, as he announced recently, he's not campaigning again until after the DNC. Then you have the Harris-Walz campaign saying, go ahead and get your rest, old man.
Yeah, get your rest.
We know you don't care about anything or anybody except for playing golf, so go rest.
We appreciate the Lil Wayne. He could also speak to the Harris campaign's fundraising. Yeah. Because he did say, too much money, it ain't enough money.
I mean...
And,
they will keep raising, I promise
you. You can feel that way. So that's a little bit of the contrast. Then, of course, Tim Walz has been new on the scene. I want to look at the reception here because it's pretty striking. He's getting as much love for his sort of relatable style as his policies. And there have been jokes from fans who kind of imagine him as the everyman, good Samaritan neighbor. The Washington Post wrote up people saying that he might even take Minnesota nice to the next level. Quote, Tim Walz beeps at you at a red light, motions for you to put your window down and tells you your right rear tire could use some air. This is people just imagining the kind of guy he is. I also want to show, there's a political comedian, Alex Edelman, who's been riffing with new material, with him being a new candidate, of course, on the national stage, about how Walz could probably fit in making classic dad jokes.
So excited for Tim Walz so that we finally have a vice president who's just giving us Midwestern dad stuff. Like after he finishes his blooming onion, he looks at the waiter and he's like, oh, looks like I hated it. A vice president who loves the city Chicago, but not as much as he loves the band Chicago. A vice president who wants to know what the secret ingredient is. Tim, it's paprika.
And it goes on like that, LOL. I should mention that comic Edelman makes his Beat debut tonight on this program by the end of the hour. But it speaks to something we've been discussing, that Walz is a kind of political popsicle when it comes to mixing Midwestern appeal and liberal policies, like those firecracker popsicles. You have the red on top that you see, but so much blue in the middle.
A throwback.
We covered this last night, and many heartland symbols that MAGA has tried to seize, from the color red to the flag pins to the entire cultural signifiers, that they've somehow claimed are only owned by Republicans, which of course they're not. So there's the popsicle comparison. But this is a guy who people have learned was a football coach and a teacher and a hunter. And as the comics say, someone who'd fit right in making a dad joke at Denny's, Eleanor.
Yeah, but he's got some great one-liners. Mind your own damn business.
Yes.
I mean, that really goes to the heart of a lot of his policies, you know.
Yeah.
You don't need policies that discriminate against people. And he is able to deliver attack lines with a smile. I mean, sometimes, well, I think he went a little too far for me with the couch allegation.
I disagree.
Yeah.
I disagree entirely, because he delivered it in a way that if you knew what he was talking about, you knew. If you didn't, you still understood it was shade.
But Eleanor, you object because...
No, I don't object, but I kind of went like that a little bit. So, you know...
well, because in fairness,
yeah.
Without... as we often do in the news, without repeating the thing that's not true, he was alluding to a type of misinformation that's trying to tear down J.D. Vance. And there are some, I'm curious where you come down, there are some who look at that and say they'd rather focus, and it's better to focus on the true, real problems with J.D. Vance, not made up things.
If that was a true thing, I would have laughed. But the fact that it's disinformation, and I had to look that up to figure that out. And I don't think you want to put the voters through those number of steps. But that is such a minor issue compared to everything else. And the way he has really reached, you know, people of all kinds of, who would have thought a middle-aged man who looks older than his 60 years would somehow become a hit on social media. But, you know, social media is, for all its flaws, it is really driving the conversation. They've made Kamala Harris's laugh a positive thing, and that was a major attack line from Trump, you know, the crazy laugh.
Well, and you're making such an important point, Eleanor, that I want to dig into a little bit as we also think about the women's coalition here, which is you don't have to be a woman to stand up for women's rights. Indeed, these things work better when people work together.
Yes.
Bernie Sanders was up there in years. He had a lot of young fans. I covered that campaign. So it wasn't that people who were 20 and thinking about their college debt or the world that they were inheriting were saying, I only want to support a 20-year-old presidential candidate, which isn't even